audio. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Aaron Bruff is actually out of the country right now in Japan, so I don't believe he will be joining us. Um, so we'll go ahead and look at the agenda. If we want to go to the next slide, Nicole. Please feel free to either raise your hand if you have a question during the meeting or put questions in the chat and we'll try to get to those as soon as we can. If you want to go to the next slide. So for today's meeting, we'll have an announcement about next month's meeting, which is the Spring Data Conference. We'll have some updates from the USIMS team, as well as the USIMS team talking about the importance of working with SIS vendors. We will have our policy team talking about the recent legislative session, in particular bills that relate to education and LEAs. Then we'll have teaching and learning updates from Kristen Campbell. Leah will be talking about a new special ed exit code. We will have CNP or child nutrition talking about some important announcements for the summer EVT. Cliff from the Utrecht team will be talking about the future of the Utah Fits All Scholarship, and then I will just give a brief update on the address validations. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll let Nicole give her announcement about the Spring Data Conference.
Thank you so much, Callista. Thanks to everyone that has joined today. We just want to make a quick announcement about the upcoming Data Spring Conference. We are having it at the Nebo School District again this year in the Timpanogos room. We will also have an online option available as well, if you can attend that way. We'd love for you to come in person. We will start at the same time, 9 a.m. There's plenty of parking. We'll have a lunch from 2 to 1 p.m. and that's a lunch on your own. And then we will end at 3:30. And I believe that this will also be recorded as well. So please come join us. Thanks so much. And then next we have Katrina and Mark.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon, everyone. Katrina Brinkley, Chief Product Owner and Program Manager for USIMS. We just wanted to give you some quick updates on what USIMS has been up to. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I am just going to show some highlights from our finance and our educator domain about what has been worked on in the last little bit. So with our finance domain, we are connected to financial API or finance vendors via an API. We're also sharing demos with the focus working group on account combinations and managing those account combinations. We're also working on base calculations for indirect cost rates. And then we'll continue to verify as things get into the system that our vendors are there and working with us. If we can go to the next slide. Our educator domain is working on assignments and qualifications. They've completed a significant amount of work on assignments, like adding courses and qualifications, assignment history, educator assignment terminations, and personal informations view. They've also updated some ethics review questions. They're got all of our current universities onto the educator prep program. And are working on improving workflow. They've also gotten some automation in place and some infrastructure work. They're also working on some really exciting stuff with Power BI, which will allow us to do some reporting within USIMS. And you'll be able to, if you want to participate in those focus working groups or see what they've been up to, you can join us for those focus working groups or in the functional advisory board happening in 2 weeks, I think, a week. April 9th. And next slide, please. And I am going to turn the time over to Mark for some quick highlights. Mark Waddup's our product owner for the student domain.
Thanks, Katrina. So just real quickly, as many of you know, we've been working on the student backpack. And so we've been working on having a solution that would allow you to manage tokens and secrets once those APIs are available. So making significant work there. We're coming close to finishing the work there for our initial release that will be used by our SIS vendors to integrate. And next month, I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that at the Spring Data Conference. And then we just recently completed getting real ACT scores up and going. As of yesterday, we also sent out documentation to all our SIS vendors for test data. So for assessment data, specifically RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, and ACT, provided endpoints or API instructions for how to get that information with synthetic test data so that they can start testing functionality out in front of full integration. And we're working, as I mentioned, to finish up that API access or secrets manager work and focused on Acadient's third grade reading and getting that available, as well as finishing up student demographics. So that's the update. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn the time back to Katrina. And feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to. Before I do that, just another shameless plug for those of you that can, please come to our student focus working groups. You can hit me up later at, Mark Waddup's after the call if you don't have an invite to that, but we'd really love to get your input, especially now as we're getting closer to the integration of real student data with the SIS vendors. Thank you. Back to you, Katrina. Oh, you're on mute.
But Nicole read my lips anyway. Thank you, Nicole. Excellent. So just a reminder, as Mark mentioned, we have focus working groups happening on a weekly basis. We have an educator focus working group, a student focus working group, and a finance focus working group. If you're interested in any of the work that any of these teams are doing, these are great places to participate and help direct the future of USIMS. I will also be having a functional advisory board, which is our quarterly meeting where we review all of the work that's happened within USIMS in the last quarter, as well as what's coming up with the next quarter. It's just a high-level overview, and we invite all of our vendors, as well as all of our LEAs and anyone who has any curiosity about USIMS to that meeting. We're also doing a USIMS onsite. So some of your LEAs have been reached out to so that we can come visit them during our onsite. We bring all of our developers in from across the US, have them here in Salt Lake for a week, and we spend time going out and talking with LEAs and seeing how USIMS is working or what the problems we're having or any issues that you're having with non-USIMS systems as well, or systems that we're talking about subsuming, so that we can understand what's going on in the real world and make sure that we're providing real world solutions. Before I move on to our next slide, are there any questions? I did want to let you all know we will be giving a more in-depth presentation in the April meeting as well. So if you're looking for specific examples of some of the work we're doing, we'll have all three of our product owners there to give you all a presentation in April. Cool. I do not see any questions. So Nicole, if we can go to the next slide. As Mark mentioned, we're beginning to integrate with our SIS vendors. We are beginning to ask them to log in and verify that they have access to the information that we're providing them. We're asking them to send test data and to receive test data so that we can verify that our integrations with them are working correctly. This is our first big step into being able to send and receive information from your SIS vendors. This is a significant change for some of your SIS vendors as we are moving from the SIF zone over to EdFi. It involves a lot of complex work, and we are asking if you please have any interactions with your SIS vendor to please contact them, speak with them about the importance of working with USIMS during this time, about ensuring that they are connecting to the API. We've had some really great feedback from some of the SIS vendors. We've had some really great feedback from districts who are using their own system. They've been excellent for us, but we want to ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to be using USIMS and to be engaging and interacting with USIMS. So please reach out to your SIS vendor. So I see the question about which vendors are not engaging, and we have had engagement from each of the vendors in differing levels. Some of the vendors have been more reluctant, and we have asked some of those, specifically those of you who are working with Infinite Campus. We had a good conversation with somebody from a representative, and we think things are moving along forward, but we would just stress, please mention to them the importance of working with USIMS and getting compliant by July 1st, 2026 to ensure that we have a smooth transition for everybody as they move into USIMS. We are releasing things in very small increments. We're expecting that we're not going to overwhelm anybody with everything right up front. But if you have questions or concerns, or if your SIS vendors have questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Mark or Don Moody or Tim Davis, our other product owners. And I'll throw Jared Felt under the bus too. And you can reach out to any of us with any of your questions. Were there any other questions before I turn the time back over? Excellent. All right, back to you, Nicole or Callista, whoever wants it.
Yeah, thank you, USIMS team. We'll go ahead now and have Elise, Jennifer, and Trish. They're from the USB policy team, so we're lucky to have them today, and they'll be going over the legislative updates.
Hi, I'm Trish Franks. We have a little change, which is that Elise is actually in Washington, D.C., and she really wanted to and thought she might be able to make it, but she can't. But we have Greg Connell here with us, and so the three of us will be presenting. Is it possible for Greg to share his screen?
So we actually have all the slides that you guys sent us in this main presentation. Does he have something other than that?
Nope, that will be perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Well, thank you for letting us present to you. We're going to go ahead and start off with our 2025 legislative update. It'll be me, Trish, and Jennifer Wadsworth that'll be presenting on this, and we appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. This is a high-level update on the bills. Our bill book is nearing completion, and that will be placed on our website and also sent out to LEAs, and that will have more information and more details on each bill. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the policy team here at USBE. We're happy to answer any questions you guys might have on individual bills. Next slide, please. All right. Did we get Jennifer with us at all?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. We can hear you now.
Yay. Sorry. Thanks for being patient with my technology problems. So like Greg said, we're just going to do a high overview of the legislative session. If there's any questions, feel free to jump in. Let us know if you want to talk about something more in depth. But basically, an overview of the actual session itself. There was 238 bills that were introduced, and 136 of those were passed. So if we do the percentage rate of that, it's about 57 passage percent rate, which is pretty intense. 80 of those bills are going to go into our bill book. Next slide, please. You need a ding, ding. So what does this mean for USBE? So our WPU increased by 4%, but all of that was accounting for inflation. So the WPU value is going up to $4,674. We do have a total minimum school program funding of $7.4 billion, which is a 6% increase from last year. And there was an estimated budget of $8.65 billion for education, but of that, $648 million is new money, 417 is one-time funds, and 213 million is ongoing. Next, please. Thank you. So I already told you about the 600 million, but there will also going to be 41 either new or amended rules that we need to go through as a policy team and as a board to implement all the legislation that was passed. It will create 10 new programs for us and also 15 new reports. That's for us at USBE. Our LEAs are going to have 12 new reports that they are going to have to send up to our legislators. And there were 8 new RFPs created. Next. Thanks.
So this is what you guys have all been looking for. Sorry, Jen. Did you want to do this one?
No, you're good.
All right. This is our notable education stabilization funding distribution. So this is the monies that came in that were notable from this year. We got 16.4 million for the necessary small schools adjustment, and that's ongoing monies. We got 25 million for the school safety needs support grant, and that was a one-time funding. We got 65 million for the Catalyst Center grants. That's again a one-time funding. And we got 77 million for the teacher professional hours, and that's also a one-time funding. This year, one-time funding made up a lot more of the monies that we received from the legislature, and we saw a decrease in the amount in ongoing funds. And that's just how this year shook up.
Okay, so
Next slide.
here's a high overview of some of the curriculum bills. We really wanted to focus our presentation on data for all of you, but there are some notable education curriculum changes. So the school firearm safety, that's the bill that's going to require training for firearm safety for students 3 times before 6th grade and then twice in middle school and high school. HB 381 is the civics education amendment. This is adding 0.5 credit for the graduation requirement, focused on civics education. 157, the energy education amendment. This bill is just creating curriculum that is optional for LEAs to use. It is all about energy, and it'll be aligned with the standards. And then finally, HB 233, that's the school curriculum amendments, and this bill prohibits elective abortion providers from providing any materials to schools. Typically that we see that in health, but even debranded elective abortion providers can no longer provide any materials to schools. Okay, go ahead to the next one. Thank you. So we'll just jump into a couple of bills then. So this is SB 102, the Public Education Reporting Amendments. You might have heard of this one because when it first was released, it scared a lot of people because it creates legislative review dates for several programs, which means that when these programs are up for review, the legislature is going to look over and review them. Which can be kind of scary if they end up deciding that these programs are not effective. So we'll be preparing, and people in these programs will be preparing to have information available for the legislator when the time is to review them. So those are the programs there. Go ahead to the next one.
Sorry if my audio is going back and forth. So the next one is HB 281, and this one does 2 things with our health curriculum. The first thing that it will do is requires parental consent before any mental services can be provided at the school. And it will also require that the parent is able to opt out of subjects that they do not want their student to discuss. Next slide, please. It also requires that the parents will receive notification if their child does receive mental health services at the school, and they'll have a description of what was talked about in that session with the therapist. This is not a 5-page report of every little detail that was discussed. It's just a summary paragraph that's required for the parents. The second thing that it does is it will change our health instruction to include the success sequence. It's a hard one to say, and also situational awareness. So if you want to go into depth of either of those, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, next slide.
HB 455, this is the Utah Fits All program amendments run by Representative Perucci. This bill basically enhances some of the effectiveness and accountability of the Utah Fits All scholarship program from last year's bill. It strengthens some of the requirements for residencies to ensure that only Utah residents are eligible, and then also looks at the income verification process to consider the combined income for both parents in the household, and that's to be managed and verified by the State Tax Commission. Adjusts scholarships amounts. It maintains the 8,000 for private school students and sets 4,000 for home-based learners ages 5 to 12, and then 6,000 for those 13 to 18. It also limits expenditures on extracurriculars and physical education activities to 20% of the scholarship funds, and this is a big change from last year. Additionally, it allows families to roll over $2,000 of unused funds to the next year and mandates the USBE to oversee the program administration to ensure compliance. Next slide, please.
This is the English learner amendments. So this bill is going to provide emergency funding for schools that experience a significant increase in English language learners. So what that looks like is it will look like after a school has been able to do its initial intake of students, they can apply for this emergency funding and receive it during the school year. But the increase has to be significant. It's 75% more students than the last 3 years. So it is significant, but that's providing a little bit of that funding. Go ahead to the next slide. This is the Course Choice Empowerment Program. So this is establishing a brand new, completely different from other programs, online course choice program. And it's specifically for private school students and home-based students. So this will allow them to take some courses and give them access to some funding. While there is a coordinating clause with UFA, and the funding is coming from the same place, it is its own program. So that's this bill, and we can talk more about it if we need to. Go ahead to the next slide, please.
And the next one is our education testing amendments, and this one is pretty short. What is happening with SB 39 is it's requiring that our math, English, and science assessments are extended to 9th and 10th grade. It does not include writing assessments, just math, English, and science. And they're wanting to extend that testing to get a greater data set of how our students are progressing. Basically using the rise in those younger grades and then sort of losing that as we move into 9th and 10th grade. So they're hoping that they can extend that data collection.
HB 447, this is the statewide Catalyst Campus model. This creates the Catalyst Campus or Catalyst Center grant program. And this is to support local education agencies in creating or expanding their Catalyst centers. It allows for these grants to be multi-year and used for capital expenditures. Requires that Catalyst centers align with labor market needs and LEA strategic plans, as well as state CTE goals. And then establishes a marketing plan for the Catalyst centers. Requires USB to hire a director that works to establish both a public and private partnerships for students in high growth areas. And then it allows LEAs to hire those with industry experience in lieu of a licensed teacher for these Catalyst courses. And lastly, it outlines new fine arts credits such as woodworking, metalworking, and welding, handcrafts and architecture, and automotive design, and a few others. Go ahead and to the next slide, please. Let's see.
So school fees, I'll take this one. This is an amendment or this is a bill that changed some of the definitions in the school fee space. So what that means is it just changed the definition of like a non-fee course and a fee course, and kind of outlined that and required every LEA to make a pathway to graduation that would be free of all school fees. There are a lot of carve-outs though for certain programs and project-based classes that you can look at the bill, and that will be in the bill book, but that's overall.
HB 246 is the statewide online education program amendments run by Representative Elison. What this did is it created a performance evaluation for the SOEPs. It added different data points such as student grade distribution, student completion rates, parents and student satisfaction surveys to the reporting card. It authorizes the USB to audit the SOEP provider courses and requires that online report cards have those additional data points that I mentioned. And it also allows the USB to contract out for central registration for a central registration system so that parents can sign up for these courses online.
So Senate Bill 178 is requiring all LEAs to create a policy that would restrict device usage in the classroom. Devices are defined as anything that can communicate, basically. So no cell phones, no smartwatches, or any emerging technology that would allow students to message or receive or make phone calls in the classroom. There is a stipulation that LEAs are allowed to include more restrictions, but the least restriction they can have is during classroom hours. There can be no device usage. The exemption for that is during emergencies, if the student has an IEP or a 504 that requires it, or if there are other situations that are already worked out in advance with administrations. There are exemptions to that rule, but every LEA will be required to have a device restriction policy.
HB 40, this is one of the bigger bills that came out this session. It's being run by was ran by Representative Wilcox. It's the School Safety Amendments Bill. This bill required radio coverage testing in new schools. It required exterior and immediate entryway windows to receive ballistic security glassing. That was required to be completed by 2035 or 2040, depending on the size of the school and its class. And with the expectation, but that by 2040, all schools would have that glazing in place. Requires better coordination between schools and local law enforcement agencies and creates a study on cybersecurity standards to be presented for LEAs in the future. Adds a few people to the school safety security task force, such as a nurse and a director of technology, as well as a director of school safety and student services. It requires that the school guardians and the guardian's alternative pass a fitness to carry assessment and creates the School Safety Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation that can both contract to buy school safety items as well as receive donations for school safety needs. It requires defibrillators and universal key access boxes to be on school property and requires a charter school liaison to be a part of the school safety for each charter school. Adds new definitions to school safety to mean the physical space, culture, and climate of a school, and requires that schools conduct a school safety needs assessment once every 3 years for each school, and that can be done LEA wide or it can be done on a rotating basis per school. Next slide, please.
This is the flag display amendments. So this is only authorizing certain flags to be on display on government properties, and that includes like the Utah State Board of Education, but also includes our public schools. It lists a bunch of flags that are authorized, and any additional other flags would not be, and the state auditor is going to investigate and penalize violations of the law. It's important to note for this law that that flags are described pretty specifically, and displays on slides or pins or pictures are not flags. So that's an important distinction to make, but this is a pretty big change.
HB 76 is another one of those bills that does a couple of things. So just high level, it allows our LEAs to carry forward their leftover balances. And if they need to, they can increase the salaries of their highly needed educators. It also requires them to distribute 94% of their interactive reading software, something to the LEAs with the 6% administrative costs. And the LEAs are also allowed to enroll students who are underage if they're coming from a different school or a different state where that was allowed. So there's no longer the restriction on the age. Next.
Oh, Jen, I believe you muted.
That's
I'm
the second one.
telling you, my mute is all over the place today. I am having some real computer problems. Thank you, Trish. The other thing that it allows is that our education students, or I'm sorry, that it restricts is our kindergarten students who are starting in 25-26 must be toilet trained. This also would apply to schools that have preschool students who are enrolling, unless they have a child find exemption. There is also a reduction in the requirements for early learning plans with the LEAs, and it removes that requirement for USBE to have a digital platform to communicate with their LEAs. Oh, I'm so sorry. The last thing is that the bill ensures that the school can charge a fee for the fine arts course. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not fine arts courses were going to be able to charge those fees, and this one does ensure that they are allowed to charge those fees if it's an elective. Thanks.
You muted again, Jen, unfortunately.
I can take this one while Jen, you figure out your mic, don't worry. So this is HB 209, homeschool amendment. So these are just two other notable bills I just wanted to quickly touch on. But basically both of these bills are going to remove paperwork for some parents. So the homeschool amendments is going to remove paperwork for parents who are every year usually having to sign an affidavit saying I'm going to my student is being homeschooled. So now they just have to do it one time. And HB 228 is public education immunization amendment. So that means just one time now, parents are going to have to say, my student is not going to get their immunizations. And then that paperwork is going to carry with students for the rest of their public education time. So they don't have to continue to do that throughout the years or as new immunizations become required for those students. You can go ahead to the next one.
This is HB 43, the Education Program Sunset Amendments. This is a simple bill. It's basically a bill that just extends the sunset dates for these two programs. USB staff looked at these programs and ultimately decided it would be beneficial if these programs could have a little bit more runway time. And so, especially with the civics education pilot program, that one had monies that had been already allocated, but not all schools have had the opportunity to complete their projects, and so this would give them time to complete and the evaluators to get a full data set on whether or not these programs are effective.
Okay, and now the time you've all been waiting for, data-specific bills. So we're now going to go in depth on 3 bills that we thought would probably be most interesting to this group. So we'll go through each of these kind of more in depth. So we can go ahead to the next one. Next slide. So HB 508 is the school data amendments. So this bill is requiring the USB to create a data systems and reporting advisory committee. And with that committee, the USB will be studying LEA student information systems, data collection and retention, and reporting practices. So this bill is kind of split up into three sections. And the first section that is all about student information systems is due to the legislature September 2026. So LEAs should prepare to be asked about their student information systems in the next few months as we prepare a report for the legislature.
This is SB 142, the App Store Accountability Act bill. This bill is very heavy in legalese and speaks mostly to those providers providing apps to students or people in the state of Utah. But essentially what it is, it's similar to that bill that we had last session on our social media accounts, in that it requires age verification for App Store providers, and requires that they verify users' age categories and obtain parental consent for anybody that is a minor. They also need to notify users and parents of significant changes within the app, and also protect that data and the verification of the age. And it does prohibit enforcing contracts against minors without parental consent. So if there's any things that the app would offer for buying or things like that, they would have to receive parental consent or verification that the parent is okay with the minor using that app before those things would be enforceable. And mostly it applies, the rest of the bill mostly applies to if you are going to be creating or selling an act, and how to keep yourself on the right side of the law. This is HB 124. This is the Education Industry Employee Privacy Bill. Essentially, what this bill did is it prohibited LEAs from selling employee contract information, and also from requiring them to use specific LEA required programs on their personal devices if they didn't allow accommodations. And so it allows LEA employees the right to accommodation if they are not comfortable using whatever the software or hardware that the LEA is requiring for their data. And that sums it up, and we're happy to answer any questions if you have any, or if you want to send us emails. We're happy to set up time to answer more in-depth questions as well.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
Calista.
you, Greg and Jennifer and Trish. All right. Well, if there's no questions, then we will move on to Kristen Campbell from Teaching and Learning.
Hey, everybody. Just have a few little updates. The next slide. Professional educator license renewals have been going out every month since January. If you have a administrator who wants to find out everyone who's expiring this year, you can email me. The other thing is the rule was changed. So educators who have 5 years of experience in education do not need to do the renewal form. This doesn't mean they don't have to do anything. They still have to go into USIMS, do the ethics and student privacy and any other steps that they may have to do. The renewal is not automatic. So they need to still go to USIMS to do that. They just don't have to meet with their administrator and have the form signed. Next question. School information. New schools, if you're proposing a new school, it has to be in by January 1 of the year you're going to open it. Failure to do this requires a waiver by the board, which is a hassle for everybody involved. So if you're going to propose a new school, even if you don't know the name, we need to know by January 1. In addition, if you have any schools that are closing that this year at the end of the year, please let me know so we can get that information updated. In addition, if the LEA does not have LEA-wide accreditation, any school that has any of the grades 9 through 12 must seek accreditation. So that's something to think about before proposing a new school. Core code changes. There's the link to them. Scroll about halfway down the page and you'll see a list of the changes that have been proposed for next year. We are going to be putting a new list out. Please be aware that there are classes that have to be approved by USBE for an LEA to offer them. There's the math course, and that needs to be approved before it can be offered. And there's some other world language courses that are specific to certain places. Next slide. Concurrent enrollment and rollover. Concurrent enrollment asked after the rollover, when we have reopened for school year 25-26, please upload files. It's harder. To do the participation form, the student has to show up in UTREX. And last year, apparently there were a bunch of kids who they had to change their registration date to get registered because they weren't seeing them in UTREX. Next slide. Oh, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? LEA is next.
Okay, great. I just have one item, a quick update. I believe a few months ago I came and talked about that we were proposing to add a new exit code. If you want to go to the next slide. So it's been approved and we have updated UTREX functionality to be able to receive the new code as soon as your SIS is able to send it. So the specs, unfortunately, though, won't get updated until August. So in the meantime, if your SIS needs more information in order to get that updated, feel free to reach out to me. But basically, you may recall you can look at the specs and there's a note that says that if the student is transferring to adult ed, but they're still receiving special ed services from the LEA, that the LEA should keep them enrolled, and so the student won't end up counting as a dropout. But that's not possible because the student can't be dual enrolled in K-12 and in adult ed. So these students were ending up counting counting as dropouts, even though there was USBE approval to not have to have them count as dropouts. So we added an exit code so you can distinguish between students who are transferring to adult ed, completely severing the relationship with K-12. They're a dropout, unless of course they finish the adult ed diploma, then you can update it and they get the adult ed diploma. Or we have the students who are transferring to adult ed, but the LEA is still retaining responsibility for the student in order to provide special ed services. So that's the scenario where you would use the AS exit code instead of AE. And the note on this is going to be updated with the text in red. So if AE code is a dropout, no matter what the circumstances. For students exiting to adult ed for whom the LEA will retain responsibility and continue to provide special ed services, don't exit the student with the exit code AE, use the AS exit code. Next slide, please. So as I said, you can start submitting the code as soon as your SIS makes the change for you to be able to submit it. It's for graduation rate and dropout rate purposes. The AS code is going to be treated as a continuing student, just like the HE and the UC codes. Those are the transfer to higher ed, and the UC that's transfer to used to be the Utah system of technical colleges, whatever they're called now. So it's continuing student is neither a graduate nor a dropout. And the federal graduation dropout codes reference has been updated. So you'll find that on the data and statistics reports page go to the graduation and dropout rates tab and scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll find that colorful file that helps you hopefully easily identify whether a student is going to be a graduate, a dropout, a continuing student, or a other completer based on what their high school completion status code or their exit code is. And we are not adding any validations on the AS exit code, but we will be working with the adult ed team to verify that these students are indeed enrolled in adult ed. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Malia. We'll go ahead and turn the time over to Tammy from CNP.
Thank you. I'm going to be talking about the 2025 Utah Sunbucks program. Used to be called Summer EBT. We are rebranding it as Utah Sunbucks. Can you go to the next slide, please? So there are two required pieces of information that are needed to determine individual student eligibility for the Utah Sunbucks. First, a student must be enrolled in a school that is participating in either the National School Lunch Program or the School Breakfast Program. And they have to have been enrolled in that school at any point during the school year 25. So that's between July 1st, 2024 through June 30th of 2025. That's the first qualification. The second is that the enrolled student must be approved for free or reduced price meal benefits sometime during the school year, so as early as July 1st, 2024 through the current summer. So the eligibility dates are between July 1st, 2024 and August 31st, 2025. So the eligibility dates are longer than the actual enrollment dates that are required. Keep in mind that students with the free or reduced price meal benefit determinations from last year, school year 24, that had a 30-day carryover into this year, school year 25, cannot be reported as free or reduced meal eligible unless they had a new determination that was made after July 1st of 2024. So if they had the 30-day carryover at the beginning of this school year and then were dropped to paid status, they're not going to be eligible for the Utah Sunbucks. They need a free reduced eligibility in the current school year. And once a free reduced price meal eligibility determination is made, the eligibility remains effective for that student through the end of the school year. That's just something to keep in mind. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about the way that we are requesting LEAs and food service directors to submit the data. And the first is the preferred method is using Utrex. The data collector has new fields for the S5 record. I believe that those are ready to go, but I also believe, I don't think I've heard of any SIS vendors that are ready to start submitting the data. This data collection for the Utah Sunbucks is due, the first data collection is due April 1st. So that's next Tuesday. So if the SIS vendor is not ready to start submitting data through the Utrex data collector, we will need a report submitted through Qualtrics, and our office has sent out a Qualtrics survey to all of the food service directors, and there's an email that has a data template and instructions, and the email also has the Qualtrics survey link, and you see that here on this slide. So you will also have access to this when we send out the slides. On the Excel template, it will show different data fields. Most of them are required. Some of them are optional. That information is on the template and on the handout. We will also include some of the handouts when we send out this slide, the slide deck, as an email, so that you will have access to it as well as your food service directors. Okay, can you go to the, okay, sorry, you switched slides, thank you. Okay, for the round 1 data collection, it is due April 1st. This is next Tuesday. As we said, we prefer submission through UTREX if it is available. If not, then it needs to go through the Qualtrics survey. The goal of our program is to get all public LEA data for eligible students submitted through UTREX, and eventually we're going to get there. We understand that not all SIS vendors are able to submit through the nightly submissions by April 1st, so we'll have to work around that. If you're going to need to submit through the Qualtrics survey, please work out with your LEA food service director to figure out how to pull the data, and so that you know who will be responsible to submit the survey to us, to CMP. Okay, next slide, please. This is a list of the required data fields that are going to be on the Excel template, as well as the optional data fields. I will say that when your LEA begins, it is set up to submit the S5 records through the nightly data collection. We, CMP, will be pulling this data from UTREX from the S1 and S5 records. So we should be able to get all of this information, but right now it's not automated. And if you have to send it through Qualtrics, this is the data we're going to be asking you for. So you see on the required data fields, we have the LEA number, name and number, school name and number, the student SSID. I do know that in some cases, pre-K students may not have SSIDs, and so we are aware of that. But if you do have the SSID, that is required. Student district ID, student first name, last name, date of birth, guardian first name, last name, mailing address that is required by the U.S. Postal Service, student enrollment date for the school, withdrawal date from the school if there is one, free reduced eligibility start date, end date, eligibility source, GWS data sharing opt-out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Optional fields that are helpful for us but are not required. Student middle name, guardian phone number, guardian email address, and then any comments that are required. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to have another round of collections, and that's going to be due on May 16th. And in this case, we want only newly eligible students that were not included in the first round. And so we're expecting that round 2 and round 3 collections will have a lot fewer students. We're expecting that the bulk of the students that will be receiving Utah Sunbucks will be receiving that from the first round. Okay, next slide, please. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Round 3 data is going to be due on September 5th, and these are students that, again, do not include any students that you submitted for rounds 1 or 2, only include students that are newly free reduced eligible. I will say they can become free reduced eligible in July and August. The last date that they can become newly free reduced eligible is August 31st if they submit a free reduced application on August 31st. However, the requirement remains the same, that the student had to have been enrolled in an NSLP school for school year 25. So that's the current school year. So you're not going to be sending students that are newly enrolled next year. You're going to be sending students that have been enrolled in an NSLP school this year, but are newly free reduced eligible by August 31st. So the free reduced eligibility timeframe is longer than a year, but the actual enrollment is this year, school year 25. That's, again, enrollment in a school participating in the National School Lunch Program. Okay, next slide, please. So there are students that attend a provision school, and that's a community eligibility provision or CEP. And they also might be attending a provision 2 school that is not in a base year. These schools do not process free and reduced price school meal applications. And they also don't normally process direct certification. So students from these schools would not be submitted to us, to CMP, with a free reduced eligibility determination. So what needs to happen for those students, their parents need to apply for Sunbucks by going to the Department of Workforce Services website, and there will be a paper application that could be made available to them or an online application. But all students from CEP and non-base year Provision 2 schools have to go to the DWS website to apply for Sunbucks benefits. This, just as a note, this is very different from what happened with pandemic EBT. With pandemic EBT, all of those students were automatically given benefits, and that's not what's going to happen with Sunbucks, summer EBT. Those students do not have a current year free reduced price eligibility determination, so they have to go and they have to apply specifically on the DWS website. Okay, and the next slide. So here, this is the Utah Sunbucks website. What I was referring to is the DWS website. There's a link there, and it has program information. It also has instructions for households that want to apply directly with Department of Workforce Services. So these households would be households with students enrolled in a CEP or non-base year Provision 2 school, households that opted out of data sharing, and households that didn't apply for free reduced price school meals through their LEA, but still want to receive the summer EBT benefits. For the opt-out, on the school year 2024-2025, free and reduced price school meal application for households that was provided by our office, the Utah version, there was an opt-out statement on page 2. The household had the option of marking, saying, yes, they opted out of data sharing with the Department of Workforce Services. If a household marked that opt out, then we, CMP, cannot share their data with DWS for the purpose of issuing Utah Sunbucks. And if they did mark that, those households have to go directly to DWS and apply for Sunbucks there at that link here on this slide. So that is what would happen if there is an opt-out. And I will mention the opt-out is only found on the household application. It's not found if a student came through as directly certified, DWS has already given them information that their free reduced information is shared with other state agencies, and so they're already given that as a disclaimer. They don't have to opt in or opt out. They're already opted in for data sharing because of their program participation. So we will this email that goes out to you that has this PowerPoint information, we're going to send a link. We're going to send a file of Utah schools that are currently participating in CEP and Provision 2. And again, we will send the template information and the instructions information so that you can have that for the Qualtrics survey as well as your food service directors. I see that there are questions. So am I answering the questions now or Calista, did you want me to answer the questions now?
You're good to answer the questions whenever, if you want to wait to the end of your presentation or now, that's up to you.
Oh, this is the end of my presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm seeing Stacy wrote, Power School allegedly has said they are ready to submit the data. We have populated the fields. Where can we see if that is the case on USBE's side? Is Cliff available to answer that?
I am. You would see it through your examine file. on the Utrecht's overview page. So you log in and take a look at your examine file, and if it's sent, it should be there in addition to that. You could also see it in any sort of warnings or errors if what is being sent isn't actually getting loaded. Last I'd heard, we're not collecting it. We're not getting any submissions for the S5 record yet, but I think that was a day or two ago. So if you believe that they've just started doing it, by all means, reach out to me and I'm happy to help you investigate that or set you up with a developer to try to help you and or Power School to get that to work.
Thank you, Cliff. So the next question from Craig is the Qualtrics upload secure? That's a very good question. We appreciate you asking that. Kimberly Leveland from our office did answer. So our IT department has done some review of Qualtrics and they have told us that it is secure and it is appropriate to send student PII information through Qualtrics even as an upload file. They've told us that can be done. So that's why we're using Qualtrics this go round. Okay, so Lee is asking, what if our last day is in June? All right, and so Kim might want to come in and say something. I will say our third round, we are collecting students that become newly eligible by August 31st. And so basically our hope is that your LEA will begin processing applications and will process applications that were submitted by August 31st in time to share that data with us for our round 3 collection. And I believe most LEAs are back in the office sometime in August. Kim, did you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, just the regulations tied to this Sunbucks program is really specific on they want to maximize students that could potentially be eligible for these benefits during the summer months. So again, we're looking at school year 24-25 for enrollment for reduced price eligibility. And then this last data collection will focus on students that were enrolled this school year in a National School Lunch Program school, but then determined for reduced price eligibility using the school year 26 income eligibility guidelines. And that would be between July 1st of 2025 and then through the submission date of August 31st. So hopefully that answers your question, Lee.
Okay. So Bonnie said in the Aspire meeting this morning, there was some confusion. Is Aspire communicating with Utrecht's correctly, or will Aspire users need to do the Qualtrics survey? So I don't know. Is there anyone that's on this meeting that knows what is happening if Aspire will be ready to submit by April 1st?
I think I can speak to that, and it's still in development with Aspire.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said.
It's still in development with Aspire. I don't believe it's expected to be ready in the next week, which would be that time frame. Before May, it might be. But before the first of the next month, no.
So I guess I would recommend that you talk to your Aspire contact to decide whether you will need to go ahead and submit the Qualtrics survey by April 1st or what they feel their timeline is. Kathy is asking, where can we submit the yes, no for opt-out data? Power School has a Utah reporting update in the next couple of days. Does anyone know if this is included in the update? I don't know anything about Power School. As I was mentioning about the yes, no opt-out, that would be something that a parent would specify on the household application. And so we encourage you to work with PowerSchool or whoever the SIS vendor is to make sure that you have some method in place to track whether or not the household marked that they wanted to opt out of the data sharing. And once you have that in place in your system to track, then you should be able to send that through the Utrex collection. And I just see that Stacy said it is in there. We populated it yesterday. We were just trying to see if it is being sent to USB correctly. Okay, that's great to know. Let me see. So Lee, did you get your questions answered about when the new applications in July? That those are for using the new year eligibility guidelines. I think that Kim answered your question. So if you have any more, just let me know. Okay, Whitney asked, how do we get the Qualtrics survey if we are Aspire users? Now, I believe that an email from our office went out to all of the food service directors that gave them a link to the Qualtrics survey as well as the template they will be using. I'm not sure which LEA you're with, but I would say check with your food service director. They should have that information. And if not, you can send me, I don't know if I put my email address. I'll put it in the chat. If not, you can send me an email and I'll make sure you get information about the Qualtrics survey. But all LEAs receive that, not just those that don't use Aspire. Sorry, things are jumping around. Alicia says the Aspire group said they can do most of the work and send the information through the Move It to us if needed, like they have done before. Okay, so Alicia, to me, that's sounding like Aspire will set up a report for their LEAs that they can use to submit to our Qualtrics survey. I wasn't on the meeting, so I don't know for sure. But that would be great if that was happening. I would just again suggest that if anyone uses Aspire, that they work with their Aspire contact to see if that is something that's available. Okay, were there any other questions? Thank you for that link, Kim. I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to, I think it's Callista, and just let us know if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. So actually I will be turning the time over to Cliff, who looks like he's all ready to go talking about the UFA scholarship.
Thank you. All right, so as it says, the future for Utah Fits for All Scholarship, there's a lot of you that have been asking and wondering, and that's due to some recent changes that have gone through in legislation that were touched on earlier today. Go to the next slide. So to start us off first, overview and refinements which have been put into place. The UFA Scholarship Program is a large-scale initiative with numerous interconnected components designed to support a variety of education needs. After its first year of implementation, state legislature had the opportunity to assess the program's functionality, identify areas of complexity, and address challenges that emerged. A lot of this came from feedback through many different sources to be able to inspire this bill in what needed to be done to be able to keep this Utah Fits for All successful for the state and for all of its scholarship students. HB 455 introduced the targeted refinements to streamline that process, enhance the oversight, ensure that the program operates more efficiently for Utah families while maintaining its intended accessibility and impact. Go to the next slide. UFA is previously been worked with ACE scholarships. Their contract has been terminated from convenience effective May 15th. So they're still in place and they're still going to continue to work with everybody who is involved with UFA up until that point. And our hope is to have RFP fulfilled out by that point. And I forgot to put in the link here for the RFP dates and the link. So that's in the chat. If you want to go there, I'll make sure that that's on the final version that we send out in the email later. But that RFP was opened on the 24th, so on Monday, and will close on the 7th of next month. That's going to establish a new program manager and potentially separate financial administrator to be able to distribute that, or it could still be the same entity that runs both. With ACE, it was a contract through ACE, and then they did a subcontract for their financial administrator, essentially class wallet, that anybody involved with this is familiar with, that's where the marketplace and a lot of the things exist for being able to select your providers and your purchases. As I mentioned, the law is requiring full cooperation with ACE, and they're giving us full cooperation. Things are moving along, and we're working through any questions that they have about the new bill changes and also with the transition. So again, that transition will occur on the 16th of May. So we still have a bit of time. If there are any issues that are occurring, please keep us informed on what's going on. USB is in a little bit more of a state of oversight, as was mentioned with this bill, that we are intended to ensure that everything works well and transitions well without getting our hands into getting things done and changing things with the actual process of what ACE of what UFA offers and what curriculums or anything else, keeping our hands out of control with that. There may be some delays, as mentioned. It went into place on March 6th. We've been meeting with them again regularly since then to try to work out any questions that they have. I know there was a little blip of time where things came into how are we going to manage the previous requests, the current requests, and there's still a lot of communication that's going through with that. I don't know if anybody here is going to be knee deep in that. A lot of that is more so on their side. If you do have any deep requests like that, please reach out to us, let us know. These are typically more student level, parent level conversations, but I can get you to the right people to help you get those answered. We do have a website from USBE for UFA. Put that link in there. So when you get this, you can go ahead and use that to get to it. You can also just go to the schools.utah.gov site and do a search for the Utah Fits All, and you'll be able to get that. And you'll also find a frequently asked questions link, which gives a lot more of the what's happening right now and a lot of good details that are hopefully mostly covered with this presentation. Go ahead to the next slide. So one of the big things that changed, which was mentioned earlier, is the scholarship amounts which are being provided. They used to be just a flat amount of $8,000. Now there's different levels of those scholarship amounts. Private school students will get 8,000. Home-based scholarship students that are between 5 and 11 for their age as of September 1st will get 4,000. And those above that, between 12 and 18 years old, those will get 6,000. Go to the next slide. And if anybody does have questions, feel free to jump in and interrupt me as we're going through, or just throw it into the chat. I'm happy to address anything that comes up as we're going through this. The UFA course outcomes and grades. A clarification on this, we have had some previous communications about, how the program works and in these monthly meetings. So some of those previous communications, I'd like for you to kind of put those to the wayside now that there's new legislation out, and take what's coming through today and in the future as being compliant with the new way that this is going to actually be played out and what our interactions are going to be. So UFA students and their grades are not allowed to be represented together with public school students. So what that means is that you can't have a report that has a UFA student and a public school student on the same report. You can't bring up those students at the same time. LEAs are required to have that separation to where they're not seeing those students in the same way. There are some caveats with that that you can dig into and discuss with us, and we're happy to help give further feedback on it. But we'll touch base on that a little bit more later. The outcomes and grades are strictly to be limited to the UFA student as a parent or guardian. So as far as their grade or other type of outcome that they get from that, that will not go through to USBE. That will not go through on the collection. It will not go through to UFA. That is, again, just between the scholarship student and their parent or guardian. The outcome grades from any course provided through UFA must not be included in UTREX, USIMS, clearinghouse data, or included in their transcript. The only exclusion for this is if the student exited UFA, they returned to public education, then it's up to the district to actually review and determine for approval any of those courses and grades which were coming from an accredited institution. So for instance, if an LEA did give UFA courses, that LEA is accredited. And per Utah legislation, that is something which is allowed. As I've got quoted down in there, that an LEA shall accept credits and grades awarded to a student from a school or from a provider accredited or accrediting entity adopted by the board. That part's not new. Go ahead to the next slide. The UFA LEA provider, as I had mentioned, they have to keep their data separate. USBE has a way of actually doing this that we've already implemented in the past. And this is a method that we're still going to be discussing utilizing for this same case. And that's by creating a separation for public school students from other students, such as private school and homeschool, through the use of a school number. The school number, which will be developed for the 25-26 school year and will be available. I know I say that this will need to be requested through Cactus, but right now our current intent is that that's going to be done in bulk. But if for some reason it isn't done for your school, you get an error on your collection that says school number 993 isn't an existing school in Cactus, then just let us know. Also, you can reach out to Cactus and we'll try to get that fixed for you. Get that added in for your school year. But again, that won't be in place until the next school year. So you don't need to ask for that now. Our intent is to do that in bulk. Additional identification by LEAs can be between the LEA and the SIS as desired, but it would not be sent to UTREX. So in the legislation, there are places that talk about having to have a distinct UFA student identifier. This is our method to try to help assist with making that design pattern available and easy and streamlined based off of how existing systems are in place. If LEAs do have a different method and want to discuss another method, we're open to discussing that, but our current intent is to fulfill this legislative requirement by using that 993 and help you do so as well. Go ahead to the next slide. Again, the mechanism for LEAs, for doing that, it also includes that we need to be able to verify UFA eligibility and to let the LEAs know. In the past, we've just worked with ACE. We've tried to give them all of the information about the UFA cross enrollments, and there's been a lot of handoffs and confusion with this new bill. It now requires for this new mechanism provided from the state to be able to get that verification to the LEA and more direct. Again, we're leaning back to what we have established for this process, as this isn't something new for us. So our intent is for verifying that status of eligibility of those UFA students through and including the cross checks with other LEAs through the collection process. And that would be, again, through what I mentioned before of that defined school is enough for us to be able to do what we need. It's enough for us to be able to fulfill this mechanism, rate triggers that say we're verifying those students with that school number. We don't have to verify, you know, all of the other students. It gives us a clean way to establish those validations to target the UFA students that are coming in. And that does mean that instead of just students coming in for assessments, which is what's currently happening, so try to keep these two ideas separate right now, is that currently for 2025, you'll need to maintain that same process that UTREX is not going to take any collection information for UFA students other than when they've requested have an assessment. And that process hopefully has been communicated out for everyone well, but it's following the same pattern that we've had again for private and homeschool students when they want to take assessments. And again, that falls back to using the school number to be able to determine if they're coming in for just testing purposes only, which they'd be then using that 990, which gives them just the assessments. Those students with that assessments, they still do get their courses. You would set them up with the courses that qualify them for that such assessment. And that process, again, same as what you're doing for your homeschool students that come to your districts and say that they want to get tested. Any clarifications we need there, you know, we're happy to take those. And just as a note, if your SIS does have an option for exclude from clearinghouse, then you should make sure that that's set for true for that 995. As that one doesn't send through to the clearinghouse, well, that 990 is the one that does need to send to the clearinghouse to be able to get those students their assessments, where we can pass that on to the vendors. There's a lot of information there, so it's going to take a moment of pause and see if anybody has, if everyone's keeping up, or if anybody needs a break for a moment to digest that. Okay. So again, with the new school year, we'll have all UFA students enrolled through that are enrolled through UFA through LEAs that they'll need to use that 993 school number so that their enrollments do not make them ineligible for UFA scholarship. So for instance, if you were to have a UFA student that did not use 995 in school year 25-26, that student would trigger on our side as becoming ineligible because anything outside of that 993 will be viewed as something that makes them ineligible for UFA, which is being enrolled in public education. As an entity that's involved with providing the UFA service, an LEA is not a part of the state and isn't represented as such. So there's a distinction there between what happens with that. I do see some comments that came in. We've got a UFA student enrolled in 995 that wants to be tested. How do we do that? 995 does not shoot to UTREX. That would be by putting them through with the 990 is my understanding. It may have some alteration based off of your SIS, but I would also suggest that this can be discussed with your SIS as well too, to make sure that we're all aligned on that. I do believe that if I don't have a document in my resources page later on this, that I'll make sure that it goes out on the later one. And that's, again, explaining out this whole process for private school, homeschool, and for Indian assessment testing. I can't remember the term for that, BIE assessment testing. That'll be all outlined on that. But again, if you are still having problems and not able to get this to go through or unsure on the pattern, bring it to us. Let us help you through this. Can our assessment director just manually add the student to test? Thank you, Maureen, for jumping in. Students cannot be manually rostered for assessments. From Stacy, we've got, so this year, can we use 990, but next year we need to use 993? Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. UFA students for this year, you can put them in what's appropriate between if they're homeschool or private school. Those come with too much connotations built into those two systems. And it was deemed that we would need to have a clean run of it to be able to have UFA students separated out on their own to where they could be identified, target validations to, and also make sure that there isn't any pre-designed concepts for each one. And also just that the legislation says that they should be kept separate. All right. Sharon Scott, so I would have to take them out of their class from 995 to put them into 990 just for the test and then put them back into 995. I'll let the assessment team weigh in and try to help with that answer, but I'm probably leaning on that sounds right.
Hi, Cliff, it's Maureen. If you cannot duly enroll a student in two different schools in your SIS, then you are gonna have to move them into a school that does come through to UTREX. If you want, if you need that student rostered for assessment, they need to come to us through UTREX. So 990 or 995, those are your two options. You can just put them in 990 also for rostering purposes. It does not make a difference. They can be in 990, they can be in 995. We have no way to verify who these students are, so for us, it's all, they are equal, 990 and 995.
Right. Great. Okay. So it sounds like we can move on. Go to the next slide. So I mentioned this a little bit, the UTREX clearinghouse validations. The students that come through with school number 993, we haven't developed this yet, but this will be developed for the start of the school year to have those new validations created and to return if the student is ineligible for UFA. And our intent is that validation message is going to be able to share where that student is enrolled for the courses that are not a 993 school. So this is going to be a little bit complex to bring this in. This isn't going to be your level 1 validation where it's coming from internally, unless of course you've got your own problem in an intermix where you've got them in both a 993 and an enrollment outside of that, which would rate them as being ineligible within your own school. But assuming that that's not happening, you'd be seeing these coming through with what we have as a level 2, where we cross-check against other LEAs to see if there's any conflicts. Our intent is, again, that we're going to try to share that information of what that LEA is and potentially what that class is. Again, this hasn't been developed, so I don't want to speak too in the weeds on what we're going to develop, but this is our intent, and we'll be doing our best to give you all the information that you need to be able to reach out, contact, and help clear up any confusion that would be holding that student back from staying eligible and the courses that they have at your school. Go to the next slide. So it's maybe helpful for some of you who are technical and working with the clearinghouse specification and wondering what this really is going to entail and what this means. I'm trying to help outline a little bit of that for you. So the clearinghouse data should include, for the UFA student data, the school record. So that would mean you would include on that school record the 993, the student record, the S1, and some caveats on that we would not want attendance data. They should be coming through as a non-attender. USB has no intent or desire to track attendance for UFA students. And that this would also be, again, be with the minimum required fields. Our S1 record's pretty large, pretty wide. You'll probably be familiar with having to take care of that anyway for home school students and UFA students that want to get assessments anyway. But if you have any needs for digging in on what those minimum required fields are, we can try to help come up with something a little bit more defined for you to make this more direct and clear. They're also going to be having their course master record, which again is just saying this is the course that they're taking. That's required for the next piece for course membership. Is you'll still be sending that student as a member in that course, again, without any attendance, grades, or outcomes. So pretty minimal on that data as well too. As again, our intent is that we don't want to know that information. We're not supposed to have that information. We just need to be able to know what courses that they're in. And that also helps us be able to get them assessments as well too. The clearinghouse data should not include, for UFA students, a big list. For SCRAM records using custody, Section 504, the summer EBT, the new S5 record, the incident record, the incident association, the student transcript, the follow-up transcript tables, the transcript assessment, courses, and grades. As I'd mentioned earlier, the outcomes are just between yourself and the student and parents. It doesn't go to anyone else. Go ahead to the next screen. UFA LEA student participation in services. So this is another big change than what I've communicated in the past, that this bill has changed what it means to be a UFA scholarship student participating at an LEA. And that's that the LEAs are now required to treat that scholarship student the same as they would treat any other student that's enrolled coming to that LEA for, again, the purposes of these services, the participation allowance, audition roles, athletic team participation, extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, and the LEAs to be able to stay eligible as a UFA provider may not deny a scholarship student participation in any activity, team, or program simply because the student is a scholarship student or liability concerns specific to the student scholarship status. There is a note that I don't have here if people are curious about the special education part on that, and there is essentially a waiver that's signed when you do become a scholarship student that this UFA program is not required, and that would also mean the LEAs providing those UFA courses are not required to meet the same level of special education needs as a standard state district. So if you're in that situation, please continue to look into the bills, find out more details about that. Got a question that came through from Jennifer. Does this participation rule apply to elementary level field trips? It's a good question. I would initially lean on that it would, but it's a good question to pursue, as that wasn't clearly lined out in the code. But it is something where there are field trip costs for UFA that are covered. So I'm leaning on that it does mean that they would be able to. But it's a good clarification to ask about ahead of time. Go ahead to the next slide.
Hey, Cliff,
Yeah, go ahead.
just to clarify, are you going to get that clarification, or how would the LEA like get that clarified?
Yeah, so USBE doesn't define these rules. We're just overseeing them and trying to act in behalf of Utah students and schools to try to help make this a clean process. So initially, you would need to talk to the current program manager, which is ACE, and try to get that clarification through them. And if you're unable to get good clarification, satisfactory information, you can come back to us. And from our UFA webpage, we do have listed student public liaison that you can reach out to, and they'll try to help you get to your answer and make sure that it's to the best of what we can do to help you. And I can pass on your question specifically to Cassie on that. All right, so another piece which is needed that has been a question in some of our previous LEA meetings was about the fee schedule and liability coverage. I think the questions previously were more about the fee schedule, about what can be charged, what is or should be planned for charge information and sent through, that the LEAs are required to establish a transparent and fair free structure for the scholarship expenses offered by the LEA, including that fee schedule that's based on the actual cost of providing the services, consistent with fees charged to the enrolled students, itemizes all the charges and fees, explains the basis for each fee, and that information should be updated annually, where again, that goes along when they're going to pick this course, that they know what the costs are going to be up front. And that's definitely a strong requirement, not just for LEAs, but for all UFA service providers with this new bill, is to make sure that there's more transparency of all the fees, costs, things like that that are involved. with taking such course. And the LEAs provide the same liability coverage to scholarship students as provided to enrolled students. So that'll mean that you'll need to probably talk to your legal team or whoever is involved with that. And anytime that you are taking on scholarship students, that is going to need to include coverage for those students as well. Go ahead to the next screen. Assessment results. The parents can request assessments, the standards, high school, college reading, grade 3 reading, or nationally norm referenced. The administrator of the assessment may not report the result of that to anyone other than the program manager, the scholarship student, or the scholarship student's parents. So again, this would be a scenario where you're not listed in this. We're not listed in this. The assessment results are intended again for just those 3 sources. So this may be something that we have to have further discussion on a individual basis with each of our assessment vendors to make sure we've aligned correctly with this and made that information available again to the student, the parent, and if needs be, the program manager. The program manager is not a requirement, just required upon request. Go to the next slide. UFA application dates. So the application window dates are intended to be the same date each year. So hopefully what we have here still feels right next year, and we don't have to have any sort of amendments to adjust these. But again, as we've mentioned, our intent is to continually try to make this the best ESA program in the nation. And we are trying to look for all those opportunities and get as much feedback as we can to make that happen. So if they do change, it'll be for a good reason. Otherwise, this is what we're putting in place as a standard that we'll be expecting for the new program manager to follow through on and for Utah students and parents to be able to count on. So March 1st, the existing scholarship students will get their open date to be able to put in their application. April 1st, new scholarship students will be able to put in their applications. May 1st will be the close date. So all applications will have to be submitted. And then July 1st, the scholarship must be accepted by the deadline. So there's also a caveat that I don't think that I mentioned where the new program manager is going to have to request that the scholarships are accepted and approved by the student and parent to where they're known that they're going to take that instead of go with an alternate option. Sometimes people will try to go into multiple programs and they'll see which ones land and then they'll make a decision. This is saying that they have to have made their decision and they have to accept the UFA scholarship by July 1st. And then within 30 days of that, July 31st, that scholarship decision has to be provided to the applicant. Go ahead to the next slide. So the references that I mentioned before, the entire program is outlined under the Utah Code 53F64. The code for providers, I give some call outs for that. The official website for the Utah Fits All is still the ufascholarship.com, which I have listed there. The Utah State Board of Education UFA page, I still have that here, and also a link for that frequently asked questions page that's a direct pull from that. Then we've also got the school configuration for the 2025 assessments. So this is the part that I mentioned earlier that did the home, private, and BIE rostering. And this will outline and hopefully clear up any of those details about what's currently in place and will stay in place for those three directions, just not for UFA. UFA will change to taking on its own school number, as we talked about. Go to the next slide. All right, so now it's questions time. Hit me with what you got. Well, I guess hopefully I did that well that we don't have a lot of questions. Feel free to reach out to myself. And again, follow those links that I referenced in there for contact. And we're happy to try to help you through this, help this process go through cleanly, efficiently, ensure everything is going to transition well to our new program manager and that they'll be ready. So the last question that came in is from Joanne of, will we be sending 993 to Utrex? Yes. That 993 coming to Utrex helps fulfill the part of the legislation that says that we need to be able to validate the UFA students with you. And that's again why we're going to create those validations to where it comes through the clearinghouse to where we can provide that back. The students which are going to be wanting assessments with that as well, that information will still go into Utrex enough that we can then provide them assessments. The state is also under the similar situation of that we have to keep all of these UFA students completely separate from the rest of the types of students that we collect to where they don't end up on any other reporting or used for any other purposes, solely the purpose of being able to do validation for cross enrollment and for the ability to return that validation back to you, sorry, and to get their assessments. There aren't any other questions. I can go ahead and hand off to Calista.
Okay, thank you. So I just have a quick update, and then I just wanted to give a reminder about how the level 2 fatal errors will impact your year-end data. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So for the update part, for those, I hope everyone is aware, but for those that are not aware, at the beginning of February, there were 2 level 2 validations that did turn to fatal errors. They were always validation warnings for during this school year, but they were changed from warnings to errors in the last couple months. And that's the level 2 district of residence that checks the district of residence value you're submitting with the physical address that you're submitting, and then the invalid address, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. That's the actual physical address and it getting validated. Next slide. So as I said, those did change from warnings to level 2 fatal errors. So you should be seeing those level 2 fatal errors currently if your LEA has any. As of a couple days ago, across the state, there were a little over 1,500 of those errors, and that was spread across 57 LEAs. So there's still quite a few of those errors. And so as we head into year end, we just want to give a friendly reminder that it is always best practice to work on fixing and clearing those now rather than waiting till July. And then that was specifically, those numbers were for the invalid address validations. For the district of residence ones, there were less. There were only 37 errors across 14 LEAs. All right, next slide. So I talked to a developer on the Utrex team just to get a sense of what are some of the most common issues and questions that are either coming through on tickets at the help desk or as different LEAs have reached out to get help either from data and statistics or the Utrex team. So the first thing to look at is, are you submitting a real address? If you're not, then that's something that you can fix on your own. So some examples would be the address is missing an apartment number, or you're trying to submit a highway as the street. Those will not be recognized as a legitimate address. So if that's the problem, then that would be on your end of something that you can fix. The second thing to look at is it might be an actual address, but the way that these are validated is through the UGRC database. And so sometimes rural or new build addresses are not accepted, even though they are a legitimate address. So if that's the case, you've checked that it's real address, but it's not being validated by the UGRC database, you would want to use the Google Plus code or GPS coordinate. The developer provided me with a really helpful website because you can actually check the UGRC if it's going to validate your address or not. And so that address is provided, that website address is provided there. And then if you already know that that's not going to be accepted, you can go ahead and go to the Google Plus codes map, and then you can put in the address, and that will give you that code that you can send to Utrex. If you've tried all of that and you still can't get it to work, then that's when you would want to seek help, most likely from the Utrex team. You can reach out to data and statistics and we can help evaluate what's going on, but more than likely it will probably go to one of the Utrex developers. All right, next slide. Okay, so are there any questions on that part of things? Hopefully by now people are figuring out how to get those resolved, but please reach out if you still have questions on how to resolve those. The next part that I wanted to talk about is the impact of leaving those errors, because I know we've heard different things from different LEAs. So we just want to be clear what that impact is as we go into year end. So next slide. So this is true for any level 2 fatal error, not just the ones we were just talking about. As of right now, like on your daily Utrex submissions, if you have level 2 fatal errors, it would appear that those student records are not being blocked. In other words, the students still show up in your examine file. They're still getting in for rostering. But the reason for that is because those records will be blocked, but it's after the finalized deadline. So that happens in October, December, and year end. And so the reason that we want to bring that up is because you may be thinking, well, I have these errors, but the students are getting in, so all is good. But when you finalize your data in July and you have students left with those level 2 fatal errors, they will be blocked in our state process that follows the finalized deadline, meaning that LEAs won't see those students being blocked from your final counts, which are used for membership and funding. They're used for any reporting purposes that uses finalized data. And in July and October particular, that does impact the cohort graduation data, among other things. So it's really important to clear those. We don't want to give a false sense of those students are going to make it in. They will be blocked. Next slide, please. So again, specifically for these address errors, and as of this week, there were still over 1,500 of them. You do need to fix those before year end if you want those student records to be included in your finalized year end data in UTREX. So please make sure to get those cleared and reach out if you need help doing so. It would be best if you can work on them now as is possible, just because if you wait till July, things always get a little more stressful. So any questions on that? Okay, you can continue to email us questions or utilize the chat, but I believe that is all we have for the rest of this meeting. And just a reminder for those that didn't, that joined a little later, Nicole, if you just want to end on that slide you shared for the Spring Data Conference, our next meeting, which is April 23rd, I believe I might be saying that wrong. Let me double check. It is the 23rd, April 23rd. It's the Spring Data Conference, and it's on a Wednesday, so it's not at our normal time. And it will be an all-day meeting, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And there is an in-person as well as virtual option. So we just want to make sure that LEAs are aware of that. I will be emailing out all of the information for that with the agenda and Zoom links, but we just want to make sure that everyone knows about that. There is a question, is there a possibility of getting the warning errors cleared? So those are warnings, not fatal errors. And if you have already done your part to clear them, and meaning you've either entered the phone number, but the student has opted out, the student's parents have opted out from sending that to the state in your SIS, then there is no way to clear that warning. You'll just have to live with the warnings. But if you haven't entered the phone number, then that would be how to clear it. Down for a couple minutes if there's any other questions. Otherwise, look for the information for next month's meeting, the Spring Data Conference, and we will send out the slides from today as well as the recording link. And thank you, everybody.